Chinese President Xi Jinping is making a state visit to Russia. He has already arrived in Moscow for the three-day official trip, and Russian President Vladimir Putin will hold a welcoming ceremony for him later in the day.
An eerie quiet on the streets of the Sudanese capital. These are roadblocks set up by the protesters. We are told they're an act of defiance against the Rapid Support Forces, the group behind the raid on the protest camp on Monday. The African Union suspended Sudan following an emergency session on Thursday until a civilian government is formed. So far, nothing has been resolved to bridge the divide between the junta and the protest groups. Egypt, the UAE and Saudi Arabia are all countries visited recently by the head of the newly self-appointed military council. Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has called for renewed talks with the protesters, a move rejected by the opposition, who say they cannot negotiate in good faith following the recent killings. Violence escalated on Monday when the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, raided the protest camp outside the military headquarters. The death toll continues to rise. Bodies have been pulled out of the River Nile, with reports of beatings and rapes carried out at the hands of the RSF, the group formerly known as the Janjaweed, who stand accused of committing war crimes in Darfur.
Not just a family of 4 nations, but a union of people, all of us. Whatever our background, the colour of our skin or who we love, we stand together, and together we have a great future. Our politics may be under strain, but there is so much that is good about this country, so much to be proud of, so much to be optimistic about. I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
For the 4th time, the United States of America are crowned champions of the world, and for the very first time they've done it on European soil. It is finished at the Stade de Lyon in the final in victory and joy for the United States.
Democracy activists have kicked off another day of protests in Hong Kong, with anti-government rioters trying to break their way into Parliament buildings. The protests coincide with the anniversary of the city's return to Chinese rule. Well, this is the scene live outside the Legislative Council now, where a large group of protesters have been gathering and trying to smash their way into the building for the past few hours. There's a heavy security presence also inside the building. We understand that police have water cannon inside. Well, the riots mark further opposition to an attempt by Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam to pass a Beijing-backed extradition law. Well, she has now postponed the measures following the public backlash. Large numbers of people, though, are expected to join other pro-democracy demonstrations throughout the day, demanding the resignation of the leader and the total withdrawal of the extradition bill.
Indonesia's Mount Sinabang erupted again today, launching a huge column of ash 5 kilometers into the sky. This is the second eruption since Saturday, and officials are warning about the threat of lava. The once dormant volcano has been active since 2010. A disaster is escalating off East Africa as crews race to empty the leaking oil tanker near Mauritius. Large cracks have appeared on the stranded Japanese ship. Experts say it's likely to split apart in the next 2 days, dumping an estimated 2,500 tons of fuel into the Indian Ocean.
Botswana's High Court, in a highly anticipated verdict on Tuesday, ruled in favor of decriminalizing homosexuality, which is outlawed under the country's 1965 Penal Code. The court said in its ruling that penalizing people for who they are is disrespectful, and the law should not deal with private acts between consenting adults.
A historic decision from Colombia's highest court. It voted in favor of same-sex marriage. This adds Colombia to the small but growing list of Latin American countries that have approved same-sex marriage in recent years. But despite the win, activists say there is still much to do.
The power went out at around 7 a.m. in Argentina and Uruguay. All of both countries were affected, save for the southernmost tip of Argentina. Public transport was suspended. Many stores were closed. During local elections in parts of Argentina, voters cast their ballots using the lights of their cell phones.
At least 30 people have been killed in a triple suicide attack in the northeast Nigerian state of Borno. Officials say it was the deadliest suicide bombing this year. The head of the village said 3 attackers targeted villagers who had gathered to watch a soccer match on a large screen. No group has so far claimed responsibility for the attack.
The Pentagon announced on Monday that the U.S. will send 1,000 additional troops to the Middle East amid rising tensions between the U.S. and Iran. The extra troops had been requested by U.S. Central Command to address air, naval, and ground-based threats in the Middle East. And this is according to Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan. The decision comes after last week's attack on 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman that the U.S. blamed on Iran.
Were shot down over eastern Ukraine 5 years ago. All 298 people on board Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 killed when the flight from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was hit by a missile. Investigators have blamed Russian-backed separatists who they say targeted the plane with a Russian-made missile. And at a press conference happening right now in the Netherlands, investigators are expected to name 4 people suspected in the shooting down of the plane.
This drone was in international waters.
But Iran claims the drone was in its airspace and released this video of the rocket that it says shot it down. The commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard said downing the drone tells the U.S. Iran's enemies will be destroyed. But despite the video and that fiery rhetoric, the president seemed not to take the bait.
I find it hard to believe it was intentional. It could have been somebody who was loose and stupid.
5 government officials were killed in the failed rebellion. 2 were federal generals, 3 were regional state leaders. The man behind the attacks, Asamanu Tsigge, was shot and killed by security forces on Monday in Amhara state. He was the head of regional security.
As much as this is a time for the general's family to bid their farewells, it's also a time for the military to say goodbye. We have several different branches of military present here. We also have military attachés from the embassies around Addis to pay their respects. We also know that the Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, is inside as well.
President Trump was the first to arrive, walking slowly toward North Korea in the no man's land of the demilitarized zone, or DMZ. Then Kim Jong-un emerged, walking faster to catch up. The 2 leaders shook hands, Trump on South Korean soil, Kim Jong-un in the north.
Good to see you again. I've never expected to meet you at this place. Do you feel, Excellency, take a step forward? You will be the first U.S. president to cross the border.
They were separated only by a narrow concrete strip, the demarcation line between the 2 Koreas. President Trump asked and was invited to cross.
I asked him, I said, would you like me to come across the line? He said, I would be honored to do that. I would be honored. Now, I didn't know really what he was going to say, but it was my honor to do it.
The first sitting American president to set foot on North Korean soil. Kim Jong-un then stepped over the line into South Korea.
We're going to go live to the UK right now. Moments ago, we got the first pictures from London where President Trump is at Buckingham Palace with Queen Elizabeth and the royal family for a state banquet. Let's listen in.
Melania and I are profoundly honored to be your guests for this historic state visit. Thank you for your warm welcome, for this beautiful weather, your gracious hospitality, and Your Majesty's nearly 7 decades of treasured friendship with the United States of America. This week, we commemorate a mighty endeavor of righteous nations and one of the greatest undertakings in all of history. 75 years ago, more than 150,000 Allied troops were preparing on this island to parachute into France, storm the beaches of Normandy, and win back our civilization.
The massacre had one aim: break the revolution by traumatizing its supporters. The Rapid Support Force militia was unleashed on peaceful protesters.